This is the official podcast of the man behind R.D. Scinto, Inc., real estate maven, visionary, community man, Bob Scinto. Each episode of the Let Me Be Your Landlord show will feature lessons learned through experience, all delivered with the humor, wisdom, and the straightforward nature that our host is known for. I'm John Iannuzzi, and Park City Productions is proud to present this podcast. Before he became a leader in Connecticut corporate real estate, with close to 4.5 million square feet, 50-plus buildings, and an occupancy rate of nearly 98%, which is well above national averages, the Scinto story started in the Park City with a family-run plumbing business. What takes place over the course of the next 6 decades is what we will focus on here on this program. So believe it or not, this is podcast number 6.
Correct.
2 things. First off, there was a quote that I saw that made me think about you, and I wanted to begin the podcast with it. Do things for people not because of who they are or what they do in return, but because of who you are. St. Teresa of Calcutta.
Yeah, that's a great quote.
That one made me think about what we've discussed on this podcast the last 6 months. Where did summer go?
I don't know, but it goes by fast, I can tell you that.
In pulling up here this morning, it's busy. There's some new art installations, the pruning of the trees. What's going on campus?
Well, Thursday is our Labor Day party. We'll have over 5,000 people. So we're getting ready for that, getting everything cleaned.
We've been talking a lot about that, and I want to discuss a few of the upcoming calendar events in a little bit. But I figured we could start this week with some news items. I want to thank you, first off, for joining me on WGCH Radio in Greenwich earlier this summer. One of the topics that we discussed on the air is a topic that we've talked about here in the podcast, and that is a subject which is not going away. Forbes today, August 29th, writes that the war over working from home rages on. Mm-hmm. Forbes says many of America's big bosses want their employees back in the office ASAP, arguing that sharing a physical workplace creates creativity, spurs development. Business Insider 17 minutes ago wrote, "The remote work revolution is crashing into a cold reality. Research is finding that workers are less productive at home." This is what you've stated.
No, there's no question that that's true. All right? I mean, just common sense. Just think about it. You don't get dressed up. You don't care how you look. If you don't care how you look, then you don't care how you work. It all goes back to self-esteem, your own self-esteem, relating to other people, being part of a team. There's no substitution for that. I mean,
I wanted to tell you something, a synergy story that I experienced here in Shelton. I was at the Dermatology Physicians of Connecticut, and I overheard a nurse talking to a patient about where to go for lunch, and the nurse suggested Il Palio. And I thought to myself, that's an interesting part of this, fostering relationships between your tenants.
Yeah, sure.
What do you think about that?
Well, we work on that all the time. If you notice, all our buildings, we have a TV in all our buildings. And what we do with that TV is we control the content of that TV. So we put up information about the new Shakespeare play that's going to be starting. Then we advertise tenants. I mean, I like to tell people, your growth is my growth. I mean, we have a large internal growth of tenants. So we try to promote tenants to tenants. That helps.
And there is that reciprocal relationship that they have as neighbors, I guess.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Other news items I wanted to discuss with you. There was an electrical fire at Starbucks on Commerce Road this summer.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
We built the shell of the building, okay? And then Starbucks has their own people to fit out the inside. So what I was told is that there was a leak in the counter that went into an electrical box that started the fire. And I think that Starbucks is the second busiest Starbucks in the state. There's 28,000 people who drive by on that corner every day. So they're still down, by the way. I mean, I'm now drinking Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
When something like that happens at a tenant of yours, how are you notified?
Oh, we're notified immediately. I mean, Starbucks, they control their own buildings and their own maintenance, so we don't have a lot to do with Starbucks. And, if one of my tenants had a fire, we would be in there to repair the fire immediately. That's what we would do. We never had a problem like that, though.
But I noticed that when, for instance, that happened, the local media reached out to you.
Yeah.
There were quotes from you in the paper.
Yeah. Well, we just, you try to just explain what happened and move on. That's all.
Another news item that we noticed dominated local headlines is the sale and movement of Subway sandwich headquarters out of Milford. That presents some opportunities for Scinto.
Well, they're coming here. We're finishing 3 floors for them. And the reason that they're coming here is that when they took a tour of the complex, they saw so much activity. We have one tenant down in Corporate 3 that had people just like a beehive of people moving back and forth. And they were having trouble getting people to come back to work also. So they saw this environment as a mechanism to bring people back to work. So that's why they're coming here. We hope to have them in here in October.
Bridgeport started in Bridgeport, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I know, Fred. I mean, you won't believe this, John, but Fred DeLucas, the first time he moved out of a 3-family and into an office building was in my office building in Milford, Connecticut in 1978.
No kidding.
I built a lower building down on High Street, and he rented the building. And now he's moving the company's moving into my corporate headquarters. So all comes around.
What about the space in Milford? Is that you have?
I'm going to buy that. Part of the transaction was that they would move into my complex, and I would buy their real estate.
And what do you see? What do you envision there?
We're going to build a new building. That building that they're in, we're going to rip down.
We talked a couple of weeks ago about that. Why? It's someone else's headache. There's potential issues. It doesn't fit the Scinto mold. What are the reasons?
The building is isolated. It's in an industrial zone. When Fred built the company, he told people where to come to work. So it wasn't an issue. But there's so much empty office space in Milford, okay? So the building is what's known as a liability to the land. In other words, you have land value, but now you have to subtract the value of knocking down the buildings, okay? So we hope to knock down the buildings and build new buildings.
What do you make of because obviously that's not the only area where there's vacant office space. Do you see that as opportunity?
Some of the empty office buildings are opportunity. Yeah, absolutely. In the near future, they're not going to be reoccupied.
We have given out over the last couple of weeks the Let Me Be Your Landlord at Gmail email, and we've asked people to submit questions, and we have a couple more that I'd like to present to you. First of all, this is a kind of a peer-to-peer email. This is from the publisher of the CEO Forum magazine, Robert Reese, who emailed us and said, enjoying your podcast, just wondering what one principle in personal life and one principle in business do you refuse to capitulate on? Now, I had to look this up. Capitulate, verb, to negotiate, acquiesce, or surrender. So what is one principle in your personal life and one principle in business that you will not surrender, you will not negotiate or acquiesce?
In my personal life, is just my relationship with my family. That's the most important thing. You always try to put them first. In my business is, not letting down people. Try to do what you say you're going to do and try to be effective and helpful. At 10 o'clock, I just had a kid come in, 13 years old. 13 years old. He's in 8th grade. He wants to be a real estate developer. So Janine scheduled an appointment with him. His name was Nicholas. He's a sweet kid. He had a notebook. He was asking questions. I told him about the podcast. I let him listen to it. And I spent a half an hour with him, and I gave him a book, the book I normally give out, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And when he left, he says, I got one more question for you. Why did you spend a half an hour with me? How did I get in here to see you? And I said to him, it's very simple, Nicholas. It's my duty to help you. So, that's how I think about things. I think it's about my duty to help others who's asking for help. That I won't compromise, I think.
What advice do you have for kids heading back? I mean, they're back to school this week. It's a timely topic.
Yeah. Well, study, work hard, learn English, study Shakespeare, study accounting if you're in college. I don't want to begin talking about education because then you begin talking about politics. So I want to try to avoid that. But the bottom line is, make every moment count. Try to do the best you can.
You brought up Shakespeare again. The hallways here are peppered with placards and signage. And why? Where did this interest start?
Just because I think Shakespeare, I like to tell people, I don't think Shakespeare was an author, and I don't think he was a playwright. I think he was a philosopher. I think Shakespeare understood the human psychic better than anybody ever did. So if you understand all Shakespeare's plays and how people relate to each other, you really understand human nature. That's why he was so unique. I mean, it's phenomenal.
I like that. I like that thought of finding philosophy that resonates with you in different places. I recall President Bush being asked his favorite philosopher, and he said Christ.
Yeah, that is fine. Everyone has a religion. Okay, even if you don't believe in God, that's a religion. That's a belief. Okay, so you have to just appreciate everyone's view on how they recognize a higher authority. I'm a member of a black church in Bridgeport that I support every month. I'm a member of a Jewish synagogue in Westport that I support. And also, I support my church quite a bit. So I think religion is important. I think it's very hard to bring up children without religion. I think that's a tough trip. So I promote religion. I think we answer to higher authority, period. Okay, that's how I think.
I wanted to show you this email, by the way, from the publisher of that of the CEO Forum magazine. Look what time that came in.
At 4:34 a.m. in the morning.
Now, my point in circling that is that I have found that really successful people that I've worked with over the years, they get up pretty early, Bob.
No, of course. You hear something, John, when you're a kid. It says all creative people get up early. So I began to get up early because then I think I could be creative. So I get up at 4:30. I don't get up at 4:30. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30.
But there's definitely something to it.
No, yeah, it's absolutely.
Our next email comes from Matt Kayan. Bob, I've listened to the episode you did about time on repeat. Thank you for doing this series. My wife and I have enjoyed hearing about your travels. We enjoy traveling as well. Wanted to ask you, what is one place you haven't visited that is on your bucket list? If there is more than one, we would be curious to hear that as well.
I think I'd like to go to Dubai and see what that looks like. I see on one of my machines that I work out on, you can hit cities of the world on the TV and screen. So you hit Dubai, and you can't believe the buildings that they're building in Dubai. So I would love to go, from an architectural point of view, I would love to do it. I think I would love to go through Germany too. Some of the back countries in Germany. I've never been to Germany, so I think I would like to do that. I'd like to do a little bit more traveling.
More traveling?
Yeah, a little bit.
What is it? There's an expression about travel being the best way to overcome closed-mindedness, and
the secret is when you travel, when you pack, you should bring one small suitcase. Because when you travel, you should travel to see people, not to be seen. Whenever my wife and myself travel, we only travel. She has one suitcase to carry on. I have one suitcase, and we go almost every place. So, travel light.
And you enjoy traveling with family.
Oh, yeah, my whole life. Nothing I enjoy more than taking my 3 girls to Florence and buying them presents. I'm going this Christmas, this Thanksgiving, so I'm looking forward to it.
And that's an annual pilgrimage?
Not annual, but we're doing it this year. It's so nice. My kids are in their 40s now, But when you get them together, they're like 12 years old again. It's really phenomenal how they go back to 10 and 12, the way they talk to each other. So it's a lot of fun.
My sister and I are about a year apart.
Yeah.
And time doesn't change
Right.
the way we interact. This email comes from Wilton, Connecticut. Mr. Scinto, I started listening to your podcast over the summer and have learned quite a bit about your upbringing. Very inspirational. On the topic of setting goals, I can't believe it, but I am making plans for my family for 2024. With the end of the year already in view, what is on R.D. Scinto's dashboard for 2024? How far in advance do you plan?
I don't, I plan one day at a time. I get up in the morning, I figure out what I need to do for the day, and I get down on the pad what I'm going to do for the day. We plan ski trips now. We begin to figure out when we're going to go to Aspen. So we get that in the book. And, of course, going to Italy with the kids, that all has to be booked. But that's the basic, that's the basic planning. It's just...
What about from a business perspective? I mean, like, for instance, that the properties in Milford, you had a vision. How far in advance did you have that vision?
Well, no, that has to go, that's ongoing. I mean, right now we have a tenant for that location. We have a tenant from Milford that we're working with. So we're in. I've gone through wetlands in Milford for the project, and now
that could be a cumbersome process.
It was fair. The commission was very, very good, to be honest with you. We gave them a lot of options, and they picked the one they liked the best. But this was a case that we really made great improvements to the wetlands. Right now, there's 10 acres of parking that has no filter. You have 10 acres of cars with oil dumping right into the wetlands. Because when that building was built, there was none of this recycling or anything. So the plan we have is a real improvement to the wetlands.
In Milford.
Yeah. And the commission recognized it. And so it was a very good process. Very, very nice people, period.
Have you had a lot of experience in that municipality?
No. I built one house a long time ago. I stay in 3 towns, basically. I'm in Milford now because I'm buying the land from Subway.
Yeah.
That's why I'm in Milford. But, I tell people money's like water and air. What you can't breathe and you can't drink, you can't use. Okay? So I don't need to be every place. Okay? I just need to be effective in the towns I work in. So I work in 3-4 towns tops, and we know everybody, and we do a good job.
But obviously, if you see an opportunity, you're not closed off to it.
No.
VJ Ballas writes to us, RD, thank you for taking questions. In an earlier episode, you painted a troubling picture for retail, but it seems things are cyclical. For instance, my teenagers now collect records, if you can believe it. What can retailers do to compete with online sellers like Amazon? I still believe retail has its place.
The problem you have with retailers is what's happening to them is really unethical. So many people go into a camera shop to look at the cameras, and they have someone take up their time to explain the cameras and how they work. And then they say, okay, thank you. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. Then they go home, they get on Amazon, they order the camera. So, I think the retail business is, in a very, very difficult business right now. Everybody, if you have to order a digital clock, you're not going to go to a hardware store to find one. You're going to open up Amazon. Okay? I don't know the solution to this. It's not good, though. And it's quite possible that this model may not work long term. It's quite possible.
The online.
Yeah. My wife ordered a box of crayons for one of my granddaughters. A box of crayons. You understand? She ordered it online, and it comes in a box. Someone delivered a box of crayons. How is this economically feasible, okay? You put it in a truck, you'd ship it here, and someone drives it. someplace along the line, this is not going to work. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where this. If I knew that answer, I wouldn't be at this microphone, would I? Okay.
What about things being cyclical? I mean, you've been around a while. Is it interesting to see trends come back into favor?
Real estate has always been a 7-year cycle. You have 1 year at the bottom. You have 2.5 years going up. You have 1 year at the top. You have 2.5 years going down. It adds up to 7 years. Okay? That has been broken now by the government, because the government is trying to control the cost of money because they've created a problem with inflation. So, and then that affects the real estate business. So it isn't a real estate cycle now, it's a monetary cycle. In other words, if you have a house, if you got a mortgage with 2.5%, or 2.25%, or 3.25%, and now you want a bigger house, but you got to pay an 8% mortgage or 7%, you're not moving. So it has nothing to do with the real estate cycle. So that's a little bit of a problem for us right now.
I did see an interesting article that suggested that people who jumped and bought these homes, like you say, at 3 and 4% at the beginning of the pandemic, are now, for better or for worse, going to be spending the rest of their life in these homes.
It's going to be a long time before these rates go back down, I can tell you that. It's a real bubble. It's a real problem. And, if you're driving to work to Stanford every day, you're putting in $200 a week into your gas tank. Okay, that's the problem.
And we've seen the MTA try and figure out how to leverage this. Increase in their fees. You brought up one interesting thing. My family's background was in the appliance business, and my dad had small stores throughout Westchester County, and people would come in, and they would pick his brain for 45 minutes, and then they would go to Tops or Home Depot to buy the appliance. So it is a struggle. Before we go, there's a couple of events coming up. The first that you mentioned, the Labor Day party, is August 31st. And then we've talked a lot in the past about the Bridgeport Rescue Mission.
Yes.
And there's a great event coming up on September 10th, Chassis and Charity. That is a benefit rally to Give and Bridgeport Rescue Mission. And it's going to be here at 5 Corporate Drive. Food, drink, entertainment, and all these classic cars.
Yeah.
Great backdrop. Your campus here is a great backdrop for that event.
On September the 10th, it's going to be at 5 Corporate. I've done this every year, by the way.
What car do you bring down?
I don't bring any cars down, but I always stop by. They do a wonderful job.
Bob, I'm so glad that you continue to answer these email. Let me be your landlord at gmail.com. You want to encourage people to continue the questions?
Yeah. Anytime you have anything you want to talk about real estate or any questions about real estate, I can answer questions on real estate.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.